YouTube says it has had enough of vaccine misinformation on its site.
And false stories from phony sites to run circles around major news outlets.
Many people don't know the difference between something real and something created to deceive them.
Open your eyes.
If you've ever had this feeling that something was terribly wrong with the world that we live in, but you couldn't figure out just what it was, then you've come to the right place. Secret societies, mystery religions, and the Illuminati have been controlling our reality since the beginning of time. But not anymore, because there is an awakening happening, and you are about to become a part of it. Wake up, because this is a call for an uprising.
This is a call for an uprising. Welcome to today's show. This is a video that's going to be on both the website and temporarily on YouTube. Some videos I'll be putting on YouTube will just be there for a few days. That way they can't catch on to me returning to YouTube, which is what I'm trying to prevent, so I can continue to give you daily content and not have to tell you where I'm uploading every single day. So we need to talk about the ATMs and what's going on in Australia with the digital currency. Banks are forcing people into digital currency. This is the next move that is going to spread around the earth, and it's specifically coming to the United States of America. So don't be deceived by all these cryptocurrencies and people that are pretending, like companies like Bitcoin that are pretending to not be a part of the central banking system. This is all part of it. It's all part of the design here. You're not going to be able to buy or sell without having this digital currency, which will be embedded in your genetic code. So I will show you what's going on in Australia in a second. As I mentioned earlier, the reason I'm not uploading on this channel all the time is because I'm trying to make sure this channel doesn't get terminated. I am building out a new channel, a bunch of new ones, and I'm only going to mention one at a time in the event that this channel gets nuked, because they'll nuke that one as well. Please subscribe to a channel called Wake Up Call Now. You could search for it in the search box and just type in Wake Up Call. You could type it into the Google search as well. Wake Up Call 2024 is the URL for the channel, but you actually could just find it in the description box or in the comment section. People have been asking me where they can find it, saying it hasn't showed up. Just look in the description box in the comment section. Please subscribe to it now as I try to build these channels out. I am more determined than I've ever been, since I've been doing this, to get this content out, to have a YouTube channel. I don't care if it has a channel with 5,000 to 10,000 subs, but I have to build these channels out, and I need your help now. Please subscribe to those channels. Help me get the watch hours, and let's build these channels out to get the truth out to the world, the truth they don't want you to see. So much so that they have buried my website in the Google search. Buried it so that people can't find me. They don't want you to find me. That's why I have a lot of channels with new names, because that's the only way I can get around them, is by having new names so that they don't know where I am. So Wake Up Call channel, subscribe to it now. Watch the videos over there. I'm going to be saying this in a lot of videos now, so you just listen to whatever channel I say and make sure you're subbed to it. That's all we can do at this point, all right? So let's get into this content here. Australia is now facing backlash. They're closing a lot of banks. Now, this part of the deception, the alt-right thinks is part of a good movement here, to not have banks anymore. And of course, I agree the banks are, of course, a large part of the problem, right? Everything from the control from the Federal Reserve is the problem. But this is being done by design. So banks going out of business or banks shutting storefronts is making it difficult for people to access their cash. So in other words, people have cash in the bank. The banks are now shutting down, and they're also shutting down ATMs across Australia, so nobody can access their money. This, if you think in terms of how they're going to force people into the mark of the beast, think in this way. You have, say, $50,000, $5,000, $500 in the bank, right? Whatever you have saved up, your money, you have plans for your money's going to maybe buy you land, your money's just to pay for your food. Okay, well, the day the government decides that you can no longer come and take cash out is a day where you're suddenly going to say, well, what am I supposed to do? I need that money to get food. And they're going to say, well, we have it for you. We have your money. You just have to comply with the digital currency system now. You're going to need to do certain things to be able to access the money. Now, it's going to start with pushing everybody into digital currency, like I'll show you in this video clip of what's going on over there. But eventually, you're only going to be able to access that money with a specific structure inside your genetic code. Because I've talked about Bitcoin, right? We talked about digital cryptocurrencies. Over the years, I've exposed this thing you've probably heard of called blockchain. Blockchain is going to be embedded in your genetic code. It's going to be in your body. I've put videos up in the past where they've even joked and mocked on national television about how they're doing studies to see if they could get blockchain inside of lab rats, things like that, right? Stephen Colbert joked about it. Why were they joking about? They're desensitizing you and preparing you for this. Why do you think they're even doing experiments on being able to do this inside of animals? Because they already can do it inside of humans. They're preparing you now and conditioning you to have this inside of you. So a few cyber attacks here, a few bank closures there that get breached because of fake cyber threats where they're going to pretend it's the boogeyman, but it's really me, the government themselves, hacking themselves. Well, not really hacking themselves, hacking you and draining your bank accounts, because don't forget the Great Reset and what that really means. But let's take a look what's going on in Australia. These are some of the clips from the news. Keep in mind some of the things I've covered over the years. We have seen cash, and specifically change, get pulled out of circulation. That's a very key component here. A lot of stores, because of the outbreak, the fake outbreak that occurred a few years ago, stopped accepting cash and coins, which was done by design, saying that, well, you're passing germs by having cash and coins, and nobody out there was paying attention to what it really meant. Okay? They were taking cash and coins out of circulation. The Federal Reserve stopped printing cash and stopped giving coins out. And anybody who was going into stores to do things like Coinstar, you know, those giant things where you dump your change and then you could go get cash with all your change. All that change goes right to the Federal Reserve. It gets taken out of circulation. They're taking cash and change out of circulation. Look at the ways in Australia, as I play this clip for you. Watch the whole thing and listen to the manipulative ways that they are forcing people and how they are trained. The people at the banks are trained to almost shame people into not using cash anymore. Like, why are you doing that? And I'm sure some of you experience at your banks too, where they're like, oh, you know, what are you doing using cash? You got to migrate. And they're calling it migration initiatives, by the way. Digital migration is the term. And they're training their employees to get people to get away from cash, to do everything digitally. And they want to pretend like this whole pushback on it is, well, people are older, they don't want to adapt to the times. The pushback should be about what this is really about, which is control, which is everything we saw go on in Canada, where Canada was shutting down people's bank accounts. Guess what? Global communism looks like China, looks like the current state of Canada, which hasn't announced that they're communists yet, but they are. In these countries, the government will shut your bank account down. And when they tie the carbon footprint in, like they're doing in Canada, if you exceed your carbon footprint, which means if you leave your house way too much, if you leave your cell, I should say, way too much, you're then going to be doxxed in your bank account. They're going to automatically deduct money out of your bank account. So in other words, you're going to have an allowance of how far you could travel every month, how often you could leave your home. And it's all in the guise of climate change. It's all fake. It's all make-believe. It's all part of the enslavement tactic to make us all slaves at all times without even needing cells. So when you go, well, I don't have to listen to that. It's an emergency. My mom's in the hospital. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what the situation is. You leave your house because everything's going to be tracked and monitored digitally, every movement. It's like you're going to be having an ankle bracelet on you all times. Okay? Everything's going to be monitored. So if you go over your allotted time per month, they're going to dox you in your bank account. They're going to take it out. They're going to take money out. They're going to freeze bank accounts if you go too far over. And then suddenly you're not going to be able to travel to certain places because everything's going to be shut off. So you try to go charge your car. Yes, I said charge your car, not get gas, because this is inside of a system where everything is done electronically. There's no more gas because there's no more independence. You're a slave to their system. So look at what they're talking about with Australia, the ATMs and the banks specifically, how they're removing ATMs, making and forcing people into digital currency.
Let's go to the issue of cash becoming a bit of an endangered subsidy. I was going to say species, but it's not a species. Jonathan Dunny, you know, I thought it was legal tender. Well, we saw Bob Catter go to the cafeteria and not be able to use cash the other day until he, you know, made it a national story and got his way. But if you look at the data about ATMs, we've lost about half the ATMs around Australia since 2017. I mean, what's happening here?
Oh, it is probably, frankly, cost-cutting measures on the part of banks, which I find disappointing. I think these organisations that make significant profits, I believe, should be required to maintain these facilities in regional communities. I've got nothing against profits, but delivering on these services to communities is critically important. But this reliance on electronic transactions, EFTPOS, I think is very dangerous. Not so long ago, we had telecommunications network outages. And I remember going to buy a coffee. Now, I'm one of these lazy people that doesn't go to the ATM, not because I don't believe in cash, but because it's convenient for me. I went down. I couldn't purchase a coffee because their payment system wasn't working. So what do we do if we don't have ATMs, if people aren't using cash, if shops won't accept cash? We're going to be a bit stuck. So I hope that out of some of these incidents that have occurred, particularly for older Australians who don't like to use electronic transactions, we stick to it. And I hope the big banks, particularly with their fee-free ATMs, revert to using them. They've closed the branches. ATMs are a much cheaper alternative. Please keep them, particularly in regional communities, but as well in big cities too.
It's a busy day at this bank in the inner Perth suburb of Wembley. Customers are rushing in before it closes for good.
I should be crying, not smiling.
I am really, really annoyed that they put money and profits before their customers.
Bankwest recently announced it's closing 45 of its branches across Western Australia, while 15 regional sites will be converted to Commonwealth banks.
But to read it in the paper in the West Australian before clients were told, no, appalling.
Where will you go?
I have no idea.
The bank's going all digital, but long-time customers like Mavis aren't ready to ditch cash.
Lots of years of saving there with little bits for my grandchildren. But of course my grandchildren are now digital bankers and they'll be inconvenienced. So it's a whole history going down.
Bankwest, a WA-based subsidiary of the Commonwealth Bank, made the announcement last week, citing changing customer preferences and claiming fewer than 2% of customers visit a branch regularly. But the union representing bank workers claims that's not the full picture.
When banks say customers are actually making these decisions, that's not 100% true. A lot of the customers are being driven to that by the bank's own behaviours.
Wendy Streets from the Finance Sector Union says these scanned documents sent to 7:30 show the bank has been pushing customers away from their bricks and mortar stores for years. She points to a 2020 job description for a teller role at Bankwest, which lists support migration initiatives as a key task and experience proactively migrating customers as a desirable trait, while a 2024 document of performance indicators lists digital migration as a KPI. She says the strategy is not unique to Bankwest.
It's actually our members' responsibility in their day job to actually start that conversation with the customers, tell them that they shouldn't be doing these transactions over the counter anymore. There's a more efficient and simpler way for them to do their banking, and they're going to show them how to do that. If they don't do that, they end up on performance-related issues with the employer. It is monitored every day.
In a statement, Bankwest told 7:30,
our company-wide goals are focused on helping our customers access simple and easy banking solutions. And it will always be important to educate our customers on alternative banking options safely and securely. And we receive positive feedback from many customers on the choice and convenience this offers them.
Across Australia, the number of total bank branches has fallen from about 5,700 in 2017 to just 3,500 last year. The number of ATMs has shrunk by 60%. The trend is really being felt in the country's regional and remote communities, including in the Pilbara town of Tom Price, which lost its only bank branch, a Westpac, over a year ago. It's caused headaches for local businesses like the Karajini Eco Retreat.
The reality is that not everybody's ready to switch to completely cashless yet. So there's dollars that we have to bank somewhere. So if the banks are going to withdraw from regional areas, those services need to be taken up by somebody so that we can actually continue to operate and take the risk off the properties for holding cash.
Tom Price residents say they now face a 700-kilometre round trip if they need to visit a bank in person, or some are flying to Perth with bags full of cash to deposit.
The reality was that the cash is still coming in and we're forced to take that cash all the way to Perth to deposit it, which is unacceptable really in this day and age. Major frustration and unrealistic risk for the person carrying the money.
Tom Price is the latest town to host a travelling Senate inquiry into bank closures in regional Australia. Today, the Ashburton Aboriginal Corporation was among those called to speak about the impact on locals.
The digital divide is huge. We have a lot of our communities that do not have access to reliable phone network, internet networks are lacking. That makes it very difficult for community members to access any online banking systems or use electronic payment methods.
The committee, chaired by Queensland Senator Matt Canavan, is expected to hand its report to the federal government in May. Some political parties are banking on branch closures becoming a federal election issue.
The only people who don't like it are the banks.
It's the number one focus of the little-known Citizens Party, which also has some controversial views like rejecting climate change hysteria, but is mainly pushing for a new publicly owned post office bank service.
We can make banking a service again.
The party's director, Robert Barwick, has travelled to WA for the Senate hearing.
Our party represents the citizens. We are frustrated that the reason we exist, we believe, is because the major parties too often represent vested interests and they leave the citizens behind.
This is a decision that's going to save the banks money. A lot of Australians are shareholders of banks. Can you really blame the banks for making a smart business decision?
You may be a shareholder, but you're related to someone who's being stiffed by what the banks are doing here. The day your grandmother gets ripped off $400,000 by some scammer overseas because she had to use online banking rather than the safety of a bank branch, is that shareholding going to be worth it?
Consider your customers and not your shareholders. And that goes for all the banks because they're all making huge profits. I weep every time I see for this quarter, they've made $1 million profit.
So again, a lot of you hear this stuff and you're like, well, I use PayPal, right? A lot of people pay electronically. I understand that. But you should always still have the choice. They're trying to remove the choice. Too many people haven't evolved with this the way that they hope because too many people have become suspicious of the government, which is true. A lot of people have figured out what the government's doing and said, you know what, I'm going to hoard up on cash or I'm only going to pay for things in cash. So businesses who decide a lot of businesses are getting pushed into going cashless. Then they're getting way too much brushback from people. And, people are going crazy going, oh, don't boycott this store. And the small business owners don't want that. And a lot of small business owners don't want to go along with the digital currency, but they're offering them benefits to going digital and removing cash. So they're going along with it, like free equipment, free tracking of this and that, less surcharge, all these things that they're doing. They're subliminally programming people into thinking it's in their benefit. It's not. It's in the government's benefit. The government is going to freeze you out. So we know Agenda 2030. These are all things that tie into it. Their foot is on the gas pedal for a reason, because all these psychopaths in power, they realized after the outbreak, which is why Agenda 2030 became Agenda 2025. They realized after the outbreak that they had to go faster because they're realizing that people are waking up. And if they don't implement this quick enough, then there's going to be a revolution against these specific people. And it's really a group of very wealthy people who are doing this, who are controlling the government, who are controlling senators, governors, etc. They all work for them. And they're going to find out real fast that people are not going to go along with this. Now, that's why I'm trying to prepare people for grid shutdowns. Because the important thing here, and I've mentioned this to a lot of people, because they're like, why don't you take it to the streets, call? What's going to happen is going to happen. We're going to need to come out on the other side of this first wave of things that occur, right? Well, we went through the first wave of the outbreak, really, so we could say it's the second wave, but things are going to get serious with grid shutdowns because we're talking starvation. We're also talking about unhinged people around us because you don't know what crazy is like until you see people starving to death and what people will do when they're starving and suffering from dehydration. Now, they're going to be weak energy-wise, but they'll be willing to kill. They'll be willing to do a lot of things. The government knows this, okay? And they know that they're going to have so much chaos that's going to ensue deliberately because of all the other things that they've planted in people's minds. Neighbors turning on neighbors, people not liking people based on their political ideologies. This is done by design. They've done this to us strategically. So we all need to come out on the other side of what's coming. But back to what's going on here with the banks. I talked about earlier. Remember, they are taking cash and change out of circulation. Done by design. Done by design. All of this is. People are desensitized now and they're like, what's the big deal? We don't need cash anymore. We don't need anymore. I pay with PayPal all the time. I pay all the time with my credit card. I never use cash. Well, that's what they've wanted for a long period of time. And now, because not everyone has complied, they're going to force it onto you. And people are going to go, well, what's the big deal? The big deal is that all one has to do is, first of all, step back and look at your rogue government. Doesn't matter if you're Democrat or conservative. Democrats, again, they think that MAGA and all this stuff, which it is, it's fully controlled. Trump is fully controlled. And they're afraid of them and what they're going to do. And they think it's fascism, right? Okay, Okay, so would you want Donald Trump and these people to push a digital currency? No, you should not. You should still want cash. This is not a left-right issue. It's a humanity issue. So they sit there and they go, oh, well, they're not going to do that because Trump comes out and he talks about we're not going digital, right? All these conservatives, by the way, Canada and other countries, these people who are fake running for office are using the talking points that you want to hear. They're trying to tell you that it's not going to go digital, but it is going to go digital. They're trying to just lure you in to think that they have your best interest in mind. There's going to be alternative ways that they do this stuff so you don't even think that the government has control of your finances. A lot of people think that Bitcoin is free from government control. It's hilarious. They're like, it's nothing. We're away from the Central Reserve, Federal Reserve, et cetera, et cetera. No, you're not. What do you think you're away from it for? Because they tell you that it's independent and free, and then they put articles and stories out there about how the government doesn't like Bitcoin. Oh, wow. Welcome to falling into a honey trap. That's what it's called, being suckered and lured. Nothing's out there and allowed to be out there unless they want it out there. In other words, Bitcoin would have gotten traction. Every celebrity wouldn't talk about it. The government wouldn't bring attention to it. It's like if I started a currency tomorrow and I put all this money into marketing it. You think the mainstream media would cover and be like, this guy's got a new currency. They probably just come and shoot me, but they certainly wouldn't let it get off the ground, and they would arrest me. Very likely, anybody out there that started a currency, they would arrest you. Okay, for trying to start a currency. So, it's amazing that people think it's independent free. So they'll use that type of mentality with conservatives. But most of these conservatives are trying to say, well, we're not going to let the Federal Reserve have a digital currency. That's what Trump says. So the guy in Canada says, it's all done by design. They're just telling you that because they're going to give you an alternative option that you think is free. But it's still going to be digital, okay? We have to make sure that we're paying attention to these little things that they're doing to trick people into giving up their freedoms. This is one of them. This is ultimately one of them. You might be out there and you're like, what do I care, right? I don't do anything bad with my money. It's not about what you do with your money. You think what do you think? Everybody out there is doing something where they're making illegal transactions, this and that? No, they're not. The government wants to see every penny you spend because they're not only going to tax you on every penny you spend, but they're going to dox you on every penny you spend. You're going to be, the carbon footprint ties into the digital currency. Okay, it's not just about taking money, it's about freezing accounts. If you don't comply with more than just the carbon footprint, if you speak out against the government, your accounts are going to be frozen. It's the same thing we saw with the truckers. That was a precursor, the trucker PSYOP in Canada, letting you know that the government will do these things if you don't comply or you resist, the government's full-on takeover of your life. This is about freedom. That's what this is about. It's not about left, right, gay, straight. It's about freedom. And do you want to give these psychopaths full-on capability to monitor your every move? You might be like, well, they could do that now. They could look at my Okay, well, a lot of us still use cash. Once it's fully removed from circulation and once they ban it, then you're looking at it, you could maybe try a bartering system, but how many people are going to do that? None. People are just going to get worn down and comply. We cannot comply to this. So keep an eye on this story. It's coming to America. Banks in America are also going to be removing ATMs. There's going to be a lot of stories about hackings, about crimes at ATMs, and they're going to just do the same things you heard in that video, how they subtly start pushing you into the digital currency without your compliance to it. And suddenly, you go to the bank and like, we don't have cash here anymore. How many stories did I cover over the years where people were going to the banks and they weren't letting them take out? How many of you are aware? I'm sure, a lot of you over the years, I don't know how many of you are still here, but we used to talk about this on my channels, where the bank's asking you what you're withdrawing for. Think about that. Think about that. If you withdraw $1,000, the bank goes, what is it for? As if they have the right to know. It's your money. They ask you what it's for. And then in some cases, they put restrictions on how much money you could take out. Now, I get it. If you're trying to withdraw $1 million, the bank probably doesn't have it. But some banks don't even let you take out a few $1,000s. So say you're trying to do a project at your home, or you want to just take money out, put it under your mattress, put it in a safe. They won't even let you do it because they're trying to take it out of circulation. These are all things we have to monitor. And again, if you haven't subscribed to Wake Up Call, my Wake Up Call channel, please, I emphasize, please do it now. I'm going to be making channels every day. Every day. If you think the stuff they're doing to me is wearing me down, it's not. It's making me want to do it more, especially the fact that they don't want me here. They're not going to tell me where I can and cannot upload on public platforms. They're not. Under any circumstance. Just like they're not going to tell me what I can and can't spend money on. Just like they're going to not be able to tell me what I can and can't put in my body. Okay? So I will remain on their platform. I'm not going to give in. I'm not going to let them win. So don't you let them win and remove me. This channel at some point is going to get removed. So sub to the backup channels every time I mention them, please. Wake up call channel. Do it now. For those of you going, oh, this is over the top. Oh, yeah, I just covered this. Google search a call for an uprising. You won't find my website in there. Just type in a call for an uprising in Google. My website is not in there. They are trying to shadow ban me. They don't want you waking up, and they don't want my voice helping you see truth, taking you out of the left-right divide, taking you out of this divide and conquer basic Freemasonry 101. And that's another thing that I expose all the time is Freemasonry. Have you ever even heard it mentioned in the alt-right? Have you ever heard it mentioned by any of these other? You never hear them mention it. Is Joe Rogan mentioning it and breaking down the secret societies? Cat Williams, these big expos? Of course not. That's why they're allowed to talk about these things. Because then if people start realizing how they have total control of everything. Because people go, they're in on this, they're in on that. How do they have control of that? How do they network? How do they do this? They figure it out that way. Through a blackmailing system, a brotherhood. And all these people who are in it are guilty of treason. It's the ultimate definition of treason. They take an oath to one another that their brotherhood comes above all, even their own family, their own blood. So what do you think? They're going to put their country first? Are you kidding me? I mean, Truman, Roosevelt, all these guys have been out. There's so many presidents out there that said, well, even though I served my country, my oath to the Freemason Lodge and the Freemason Brotherhood comes first. And that's exactly right. They don't want you to know that either. So make sure you sub to my other channels and join the website if you haven't yet at callforanuprising.com because you ain't going to find it in a Google search. I'll tell you that much. I appreciate all of you greatly. More content to come, but make sure you sub that backup channel now. God bless all of you as always and your families.